Hi everybody, it's Kim from Patriot Garden, and we're going to do a garden tour today, starting with our new landscape design. Now, some of you might have remembered a few videos back we talked about taking out 20-year-old shrubs in our front yard landscaping. We had overgrown rhododendrons and a whole mess of stuff that just was not working for me anymore. It was covering up my windows, which I didn't like. It also made the windows very dirty and very messy, and I decided that we were needing a change. Now, contrary to my woodland garden, I do kind of like a little symmetry when it comes to the front, and so I did plant my two gardens with that symmetry in mind, and I just wanted to show you what plants we chose for the landscaping. We actually tried to choose things so that we'd have continuous bloom from May till about September, and of course some edibles too. The lighting is not great, but we'll walk back there to take a look at the elderberry shrub that is going to hopefully camouflage the propane tank. So let's start with Spirea. Spirea comes with a spring blooming plant and a summer blooming. It has a beautiful umbral flower, which is great for attracting things like ladybugs, and it also is continuously blooming, and I love this light pink blossom. Now, Spirea is really good for pruning. It will take pruning very well, and I'd like to have it grow a little bit bigger, but I certainly don't want to be blocking my windows again like those overgrown rhododendrons. So this will be one of the first things to bloom in this front garden. Also an early bloomer is something I didn't even know existed, and that was this beautiful climbing hydrangea. Next to bloom will be these little lime hydrangeas. This is a dwarf plant that also will take pruning quite well. It will have a light green lime colored flower, and it will flower for the middle of the summer, July and August. Now, the last to bloom will be these grass-like Liriope plants. They'll bloom with a beautiful purple cylindrical shaped flower. And that way, between the Liriope, the little lime hydrangea, the climbing hydrangea, and the Spirea, we should have blooming from May till September. We also chose to plant some elderberry. I found this beautiful black lace elderberry specimen at the nursery, and I hope to have flowers and berries on this sooner than the smaller versions of this shrub that I found for the herb garden. So here's the potato bed. It has 3 different varieties of potatoes. I have Kennebec in here, I have Yukon Gold, and I have a red potato, and they are just exploding with growth. The only thing I've used to amend this bed is compost and some regular applications of bone meal. Next to the potato bed, we have our empty roost stout row. That'll be filled with something next year. And then I just planted sweet potatoes. I really think I'm a little late here, but we'll see. And there's our rooster. He's one of the meat chickens, so he's not going to be around for long, but he likes to make himself known. I have hilled these potatoes 3 times. For those of you who are new to potato growing, hilling is when, as the potato plants grow up, you cover with more dirt or straw or whatever mulch that you have. They'll grow in straw just as well as they'll grow in dirt. Now, you don't hill because you want potatoes to grow along the stem of the potato plant. That is a myth. If you've ever seen those ads with potato growers, whereas the stems grow, you add the dirt and more potatoes will grow, that's not going to happen with a potato plant. It's only going to grow the amount of potatoes that it's going to grow. Hilling it just helps the potatoes to never be exposed to sunlight. They are from the Solanaceae family, and if they are exposed to the sunlight, they turn green, and that green indicates that it could have the potential of, making you a little sick if you eat them. You never want to eat a potato that has grown green. So the hilling really is to protect the potatoes underneath and make sure that they're not exposed to sunlight. I was gifted these raspberry canes. I'm not really sure if they're summer bearing or fall bearing, but I did want to get them in the ground and get them started. Now, I do believe the leaf damage, the missing leaves, is absolutely due to my chickens. Now this is our pumpkin patch. I have 3 varieties of pumpkins around the outside, and I also have 2 varieties of winter squash. I have a honey bear winter squash, which is a very small personal sized acorn squash, and I have the butter baby winter squash as well. That's a small butternut variety. Now they are not normally trellised plants, but I'm going to try to grow them vertically because I know that these pumpkins are eventually going to take over this entire space and then creep into the lawn as well. You're probably wondering what that collection of bottles is for. When the plants were smaller, at night I would cover them each with their own little cloche. I'll show you how I did that with one of my smaller plants. And it just kind of protected the plant at night if the temperatures were going to be going down a little bit. And it also protected the plant from the bunnies that live in the neighborhood. The sunflower patch is growing beautifully. It's doing exactly what I wanted it to do, which was to cover this part of the chicken run and offer the chickens some shade. And as you can see, they jump up on their laying box and they try to get in and eat the leaves. I see some chomped down leaves right here. So it not only will offer them a little shade, it'll also give them a little snack. Some of the smaller ones, this is solar eclipse sunflower, have been blooming, and they're one of my favorite flowers. And zinnias are growing. This is the cherry profusion bicolor zinnia. It's a smaller statured zinnia. Now let's head into the hoop house and see what's growing there. Now the hoop house I have reserved for all of my heat-loving plants, and I know that there is a squash here. I believe this is one of those Ron Denise round zucchinis, but it definitely is a stowaway and probably dropped out of the tray. On this squash plant, I noticed I'm getting a lot of male flowers. Male flowers are on a stem. Female flowers, you would actually see a squash, and I think on my other plant outside, I'll be able to show you that. Don't fret if your squash plant is growing mostly male flowers in the beginning. When plants are immature, sometimes they do weird things like that. Got some California Wonder peppers here. As you can see, they also sustain some chicken damage. Occasionally the girls get in here when they shouldn't. But, you know, as long as they have enough leaves for photosynthesis, the plants will be fine. I also did some pruning on these plants. When you pinch the top, you encourage branching. Put these small little trellises here that I'm hoping to grow some personal sized sugar baby watermelons. I did that 3 times, and I also have some beans over there. So this is a big mixture, mishmash of stuff. These are my overwintered peppers. Not quite sure how this is going to work out. I do see some blossoms on these, which means I will get peppers, and I'm assuming that this is a cayenne. I kind of lost track of the varieties, but you can see a little cayenne pepper here, which is good because we use a lot of that, especially for the chickens in the winter. Then I have my second crop of garlic going on here. Not sure how that's going to do in the heat, but we'll give it a try. I really loved the garlic harvest that I got here a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm going to continue to plant my garlic right in this spot in November. The one problem with this hoop house is making sure that pollinators come inside. So I think what I'm going to do is also plant some very colorful flowers to attract them into the door and leave the flap at the other side open so that they have a way in and a way out. Okay, let's head into the main garden. All these volunteer currant tomatoes. Currant tomatoes are those super tiny tomatoes that basically look like currants. I definitely am going to have to thin this grouping out so that the remaining plants can be healthy. I'm going to let them just vine all over the fence here. It's a little soapwort growing over there and some thyme. And you'll be able to figure out quite quickly that I like to jumble up a bunch of things together so that there's variety and a few surprises in the garden. You're going to see a lot of that variety in this bed right here. When I was growing my tomatoes, we had a really tough spring. It was very cold. It was very rainy. So I brought my seedlings out here to harden them off. And I noticed that they were not looking so good in their little pots. So I threw some in here just as kind of like a nursery space, just to have them wait till I got the real spaces ready for them. But as you can see, they did really well, so I kind of left them. Now I need to be honest, I'm not sure what they are. They could be a climbing triple crop. They could be a giant Belgian. Those are the two big varieties that I'm growing. I have pruned them and I have staked them. So we'll have to wait and see. There's nothing wrong with a few surprises in the garden. I've got this beautiful dill growing, and this actually is a volunteer. All of these are dill plants that think that they are perennials, and I love dill plants. We do a lot of pickling, so as soon as they blossom, I probably will cut them down and freeze them, and then as I pickle, I will take the fronds out of the freezer and put them in the jar. They don't lose any of the flavor if you do that. So if you're growing a lot of dill and you're not ready to do your pickling yet, don't be afraid to do that. I've also got some carrot flowers growing. It's also an umbral flower, which is what we call a flower that looks like an umbrella, all these individual blossoms. Now carrots are biennial, which means these are carrots that I did not pick, that I planted last year. So they flower the second year. And I'm going to leave a few here amongst my regular carrots so that I have some seeds for next year. And as soon as I harvest the beets and the rutabagas, more carrots will go in there. Now this is one crazy bed going on. I have this huge comfrey plant that I use to make a tea for my garden. I let the chickens eat the leaves. They're a very awesome source of protein, and they do have those beautiful purple flowers that are just coming to the end, I think. They bloom consistently along this stem. So they're at the end, and I don't think they're going to go much further, but they are so pretty. And I kind of just leave this plant here. I don't use all this comfrey, but I do let it just grow. And then we have some radish flowers. I think this is alpine radish, which is a white, roundish radish. And I'll let these grow for the seeds. I've also heard that the seed pods are really delicious. The tomato plants that I pruned last week are looking great. This climbing triple crop is indeterminate, which means it will just keep growing and growing and growing until the first frost comes, which we're expecting September 18th, I think. Or if the growing tip were somehow pulled off, I've done that to plants by accident, and you will get an undetermined amount of tomatoes. As long as it's growing, it will produce tomatoes. Now I'm also growing a Roma paste tomato, which I think is over here. Determinate varieties are going to grow only so large, and they're only going to grow the amount of tomatoes that they're going to grow. Usually paste tomatoes are in the determinate family. I have pruned it. The stem is really healthy, probably from the eggshells that I put in the hole, and also the pruning that I did so that the energy of the plant went to making a really strong stem and good root system. But because this will be more of a bush plant than a vine, I haven't yet needed to stake it. As I'm going through the garden, I can so smell this basil. There is nothing like fresh basil. Basil can be pruned over and over again as well. So when you come to harvest your basil, make sure you harvest from the top. And if you need a lot of it, harvest it down to the next grouping, and you will encourage that plant to branch off from the point at which you harvested it. Now you might notice in my beds I periodically have leeks and onions growing. Leeks and onions are a great companion plant a lot of the times because of their scent. They will really repel or at least confuse the pests. And I noticed that the beds where I put a nice mixture of plants and flowers, I am getting less pests. So that intercropping or interplanting technique really does work. And you'll see that I also combine that with flowers. I don't know if you can see here, I've got some nasturtium growing in that pot of basil, and I have nasturtium growing between my containers. That's another wonderful plant to use to confuse pests. My peas are just going crazy. Our weather has been on the cool side. Today it was only 79 degrees. It's got a breeze. I mean, we're in late June and we're still getting these beautiful cool nights, which is perfect for peas. And I am harvesting an entire meal's worth of these peas every day. They're sweet and delicious. I've kept my cabbage under this insect netting for the entire time it's been growing. And I love the look of that cabbage. It looks like a beautiful rose down there. It's starting to form heads, and I'll have a second crop ready to plant pretty soon. I think what I'll do is I'll just put the small plants in and amongst the big ones just as I'm about to harvest. I don't see any broccoli coming yet. I see a lot of beautiful leaves. I have been amending it with bone meal and with regular tomato fertilizer, so it's got plenty of compost in here. So I'm hoping to see some evidence of broccoli soon. And then a beautiful patch of leeks. I grew all of my marigolds from seed. Marigolds are a wonderful pest repellent. And then some more of these beautiful umbral carrot flowers. They're related to Queen Anne's lace, if you've ever seen that flower. They're just really beautiful. My container plants are doing great. They are not quite as dark green as the plants that I put in the garden. And I'm wondering if that is because they just need more nutrients. So I did today put a little bit more bone meal. These are a yellow bush bean, and these are the round zucchini, that rondinise zucchini. I did notice today, I'm not quite sure if it's on this plant or this plant. Oh, there we go. I don't know if you can see that, but we have a female flower coming, and we have some male flowers. I think there's another one tucked behind it, if you can see back there. I've never tried this variety, but I'm looking forward to it. My nasturtium are growing beautifully. They're inside the cement blocks that are holding up my container garden. I really like this system. I ended up putting bricks to support the wood, but it's helping to keep the pots draining so that they're up off the ground. And remember, containers need fertilizer a little bit more often. They also need water a little bit more often. I tend to do deep watering method where I only water once every 3 or 4 days. I go by what my plants are telling me. If they look fine, I don't water them. I have another container system here with that determinate plum variety tomato. I just wanted to see how it would do in that pot. It actually is doing really, really well. Remember, we're pruning our suckers. Even on a determinate, I'm pruning them a little bit so that the plant doesn't get too bushy. And I already have 3 clusters of fruit. And down here I have some bush pickling cucumbers. I've never grown those before. I'm looking forward to it. Now, not everything here needs these trellises, but I found that when I put those in there, the chickens stopped jumping up into the buckets to scratch. I also am experimenting with no mulch and with mulch. So these are not mulched and the other containers are mulched, and we'll see the difference. Remember, I consider my garden to be my classroom, right? So we're experimenting, we're throwing things together, we're trying new stuff, and what doesn't go well this year will go better next year because I'll learn. What I can't grow in this garden because I kind of messed up, or I grew the wrong varieties, or I put too many together, then I'm happy to go collect those from neighborhood farms and farms in the area and put those away for the winter. This is one of my favorite perennial beds. It has suffered a little bit of damage, but my rose bush came back. Don't ask me what variety. I don't know. It's just beautiful. Now, this is my woodland perennial garden, but what I really wanted to show you for the first time is we are going to have lots of grapes. Of course, that is if the birds don't get to them. Grapes' roots go deep, so it's probably not going to be tremendously helpful to top dress and put fertilizer. They're going to get their nutrients from deep into the earth. But I did put a little bone meal, only because I was giving everybody else bone meal, and I didn't want to leave the grapes out. As soon as these grapes start to get bigger, I think I'm going to cover this whole thing with a light netting so that the birds don't devour this amazing harvest. Now, if you're a plant lover, you know you can't go past a nursery or even the Walmart flower aisles without looking to see if there's anything you don't have. And I found something I don't have. I found this beautiful Malabar spinach. I've never seen anything like this. It actually is a vining spinach. It is edible, and I will give you a little glimpse of this fixture that I bought years ago. My kids were totally embarrassed that I was buying what they called the White Lady. The White Lady has lived in our garden for many years, and this Malabar spinach is going to be perfect for that garden ornament. Okay, this is a really long video. I appreciate you sticking around. I hope maybe I've inspired you with the things that are growing in my garden. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button, leave a comment or a question, and we'll see you next time. Happy gardening, everybody.